One of the question that was asked in the account assistant exam of Jkssrb in economics portion was which one of the following options represent already spent expenses by a firm but the same are not recorded in the account books. The option was sunk cost, B was uncontrollable cost, C was implicit cost, and last was the explicit cost. Here the question says the already spent expenses. Now, if we go by the already spent expenses, it looks like a sunk cost. But the question further says, but the same are not recorded in the account books. Now, which costs are not recorded in the account books? If we see the implicit costs, that is, the implicit costs are not recorded in the account books. Now, what is the correct option? First, we will see what are the sunk costs and implicit costs. It cannot be an explicit cost or uncontrollable cost. It is for sure. Now, let us see. An implicit cost is a cost that exists without the exchange of cash and is not recorded for accounting purposes. Implicit cost is a cost that exists without the exchange of cash. There is no exchange of cash in implicit costs and is not recorded for accounted purposes. So it is not also accounted for or recorded for the accounting purposes. So these are excluded in accounting costs. What are the accounting costs? Accounting costs are all accounting costs are the costs that are explicitly made. That is, accounting costs implies the explicit costs only. Explicit costs. But the economic costs include both implicit and explicit costs. So the implicit costs, though they are the costs, but these are not recorded when we are dealing with the accounting costs. But when we are dealing with the economic costs, we include both the implicit and the explicit costs. Now, what are the sunk cost? A sunk cost refers to money that has already been spent and which cannot be recovered. A sunk cost is a money that has already been spent, which the first part of the question says, which is already been spent and which cannot be recovered. Actually, the sunk costs or the fixed costs also. It's a kind of fixed cost. So if sunk cost is fixed cost, that means sunk cost is also then explicit cost. Explicit cost. That means these costs are actually recorded in the account in accounting purposes. So coming to the question again, which of the following options represent already spent expenses by a firm? So first of all, sunk costs are already spent expenses, but they are fixed costs. They are fixed costs. By fixed, we mean they are then explicit costs. Now, the question further says, but the same are not recorded in the accounting books. Now, in accounting books or the accounting costs or the costs which are only the explicit costs. That means The correct option here is the implicit, because in accounting cost we only include the explicit costs. We don't include the implicit cost. So the correct option here seems the C option, which is the implicit cost. Why? The difference between accounting cost and economic cost is that of the implicit cost. In accounting cost, we only include the explicit costs, but in economic costs, we include both implicit plus explicit. So the question, the probable or most appropriate option is here C. The confusion is slightly in this line, that is already spent expenses. By already spent expenses, it look like a sunk cost, but the question says that are not recorded in the account books. Which costs are not recorded in the accounting books? These are the implicit costs. They are not recorded in the accounting books. So the correct option would be implicit costs, though there is some slightly confusion in the question itself, because it says already spent expenses, or the implicit cost is already spent expenses. There seems some contradiction, but the most appropriate seems here the implicit cost.